Me and my wife were talking to somebody one time and mentioned something about his name, and they said, oh, he's got a lot of names. He goes by many names. It really doesn't matter. Down here at the bottom, if anybody knows how to read this, Yod Vav, Shin Mem Vav, there was no letter J in any alphabet until 500 years ago, which is why in ancient Bibles, King James Bibles, you'll see Jesus written with a capital letter I, which would be Latin, which came out of Greek, which is actually the letter Yod. So if you take the letter Yod, if phonetically it's pronounced as a Y, but placement-wise, the 10th letter, it's either the letter I or the letter J, which is why when they came up with the letter J, they then took half the words that had an I and gave them J's, and the other half were left with I. But that's what English did to the alphabet. Have you ever heard the phrase in English, oh, he's just some old Joe Schmo? It's a term of like, whatever. We don't know his name. We don't care what his name is. He's just some Joe Schmo. And you might think, well, that's English. It's actually Hebrew, which is why it's on here. Because if you were going to spell the word Joe, now you might say, well, the word Joe, for example, in Jerusalem, there's a place that's called, I think it's called Cup of Joe, like cup of coffee. And I believe they spell it with a gimel. And that's not really a J, but they kind of play with the phonetics. But the thing is, you'd spell Joe with a Yod Vav. And if you know the meaning of Yod Vav, the letter Yod means he will, and the letter Vav as a suffix means his. So the prefix of Yod and the suffix of Vav meaning his means he will his. He will what his? That's not good English. Hebrew words do not make good English, which is why they're retranslated. You look at Strong's Concordance or other dictionaries, and they'll give you better English renderings of words, because in Hebrew they're concepts glued together. They're not really elements. Elements are molecules of all the same sort of atom, but compounds are molecules made up of different sorts of atoms. So as we talked before about Hebrew's combined physics and chemistry and math and all in engineering, if you take a compound molecule where you take different elements and hook them together, you form words. So if you have the concept of he will his, and the letter Yod is a hand that works, it kind of means he will accomplish his stuff. He will do what's his own thing. He will see to it, Yod, that he's about the working business of his own personal stuff. And then if you look at Shmo, is Shin Mem Vav. Well, the word Shin Mem means name, fame, renown, occupation, and Shin Mem Vav means his name. So anywhere in the scriptures that you see the word Shin Mem Vav, it's literally translated his name. But it also means his fame, his renown. And so when you say, I forget where it was, I think it was Psalm 102, where it says, he has exalted his word above all his name. And I told you once before, in one of the weeks, we had a conversation with a friend of mine, and we were discussing, I was expressing the significance of his name, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. And the guy says, it doesn't matter, because the Psalms say, he has exalted his word above all his name. It's like, so his word is preeminent above his name. And it's like, how can that be? His name is like the ultimate. The ultimate thing is his name. These are all his names. Right on the top is I am that I am, or I will be what I will be. How can there be anything greater than that? His word is simply an expression of who he is. But his name, that says who he is. That says it all. El Elyon, the most high, the highest, the epitome, the ultimate. Oh, but he stuck his word above that? It doesn't make any sense. I had quite a bit of a conversation with my friend, and he wouldn't see it. No, he's exalted his word above all his name. It's like, that doesn't even make sense in English. What do you mean? Above all his name? You mean all of his names? No, all his name. Does that mean Every piece of his name? I mean, what are you saying, all his name? It doesn't make sense. Well, as I said once before, when you see a verse that even rendered in English, it doesn't make sense. It's kind of like when there's a bump in the carpeting and you keep tripping over it, and you trip over it every time you walk by, and you trip over it, and finally say, what is going on? You lift it up, maybe you've got a warped board, maybe there's a mouse under the carpet, maybe the hairbrush you lost. Oh, how to get under the carpeting? But I keep tripping over it, I need to deal with it. If you have a sentence, I can't understand how his word can be above all his name, you look at it in Hebrew. And what it says is, he has exalted his word, which I believe is the word debir. Above is the word ayin lamed. And if you look in the Red Dictionary, it means above, at, beside, next to, concerning, together with, because of, on account of, in spite of. And it also means yoke. In other words, when the translators simply said, oh, this means above, why do they say that? Because sometimes, usually, if you were aliyah, when you go to Jerusalem for the festivals, it said, or go back to Israel, it said, making aliyah, you're going up to Jerusalem, you're going back to Jerusalem, it's the high place of the nation. Allah or aliyah literally means height. But it doesn't mean that every time you see the word ayin lamed, it means high. It says, he has exalted his word, ayin lamed, kaf lamed, shmo, shin mem vav, above all his name. Well, the point is, if it means yoked to all his name, kaf lamed is not just the word all, but it's the complete, every aspect of. Well, if he has exalted his word or lifted up his word above or connected to his name, how do you do that if it's yoked? Well, if you have two things that are hooked together, say if you have two people handcuffed together, if you jerk one this way, the other guy's following. And if you pull the other guy this way, that guy's going to follow him because they're hooked together. They're yoked with handcuffs. If he has bonded his word to the entirety, the complete package, the kaf lamed of his name, and his name actually means name, fame, noun, reputation, occupation, and all the stuff you're about. It also means here and there. Shem means here and there. Then what you're saying is everything on this page is locked in reference to his word, which means if he fails to keep one letter of his word, his name ain't worth squat. Therefore, if he's going to live up to all these great names, he's also going to live up to every word he says. And when he says, when Israel returns to me, I return to Israel. When Israel says, Hoshana Yahweh Eloheinu, then I will respond and I will shua Israel, Ami, my people. If you look at Zechariah 13:9, I believe it is. We were talking about Zechariah last week. Some people weren't here, but last week it wasn't the letter Resh, that was the previous week. But last week it was Labor Day, so we had kind of a week off and kind of a question and answer, but it was kind of like in between Resh and Shin. So we talked about Zechariah, first 5 chapters. But if you look at the end of, near the end of Zechariah 13:9. Back up a little bit. If you go into chapter 13 of Zechariah, it talks about the removal of impurity in the land. You'd have to read the whole book of Zechariah. I try to encourage people to do that for the week of the Resh. The word zakar means remember. A sword is also a zakar. Manliness, a male, a group of men, is also zakar. To have a memory like the man's family name is also zakar. So when he says, the name Yud-He-Vav-He is my Shem Zakar, it's translated memorial name, but it can also be read as the masculine attribute of the Almighty. Zakar Yah might mean remember Yah, but it also means, it's kind of an image of this picture, which is why we're talking about that. Anyway, he talks about a coming time of trouble to Jerusalem, and he's going to cleanse the land. But then, if you read verse 9, in fact, back up, there will be in all the land Nam Yahweh. When he says Nam, Nun Aleph Mem, Nun is to impart, Aleph Mem means a mother, a matriarch, a nation, a people, and it's kind of like a place of incubation, or like a city. It's metropolis. A city is a place of industry where everybody works and is busy to produce product, just like a mother. So that's an Aleph Mem. And if you say, well, Nun Aleph Mem is to initiate maternity or to start things developing. And so every time in the scriptures where it says the word of Yahweh, or it says here the word of Hashem, if you read it in Hebrew, it says Nam Yahweh. What Yahweh's saying is, I'm going to throw the switch, engage the electricity, throw the lightning bolt, cause this thing to happen, and you can count on that. Every time he says Nam Yahweh, and it's translated the word of Yahweh, you don't quite get the same impact. So you have to read the letters and see what the letters mean, and then you get this deeper sense. Nam Yahweh. 2 portions, and in parentheses this here, of the population, will be cut off and perish. And the third part will be left in it. This says 2/3 of the inhabitants of Jerusalem will die. Now, that's a pretty big event. Is that now? Is it in the future? Who knows? In a few days, on September 20th, the UN is trying to propose a resolution to take Jerusalem away from Israel, push Israel back. It might cause an international incident. Jamie's on his way, like I said, or there in Israel with Todd Bennett right now. But let's read verse 9. Because remember, Shin, fire. What's not afraid of fire? More fire. 2 types of fire that the scriptures talk about. One is being thrown into the fire, the abyss, the lake of fire, the place of torment, the place of exclusion and being kicked out and away from Yahweh. But the other fire is the refining fire. All of our works will be thrown into the fire. So imagine you getting thrown into the fire. I believe Yahweh's going to throw us all into the fire. Good and bad, righteous and wicked. And the reason I say that is because he said the wicked will be thrown into the fire and burned as thorns are burned. But the righteous, picture the story in Daniel chapter 3 where Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were thrown into the fiery furnace because they wouldn't bow down to the king when he played the music and said, worship me as Elohim. They said, no, we're not going to do it. He threw them into the fire. The only thing that burned off were their ropes. If we get thrown into the fire, he says, the refiner's fire, all of the substance of our life that is wood, hay, and stubble will be consumed. But everything about our life which is of him and unto him will be refined and purified, the dross taken off, and what will be left is as gems, refined to their intrinsic beauty without flaw. If we get thrown into the fire, what we have a hope for is all of our pollution be done away with forever. And the substance of who we really are unto him will be allowed to freely express itself because the bonds of the restrictions of this dark age will be burned off. So we can look forward to being thrown into the fire knowing it won't harm the real us. It's not the same apprehension of fire as the wicked might have, ought to have, better have. So look what it says here, verse 9. I will bring, this is Yahweh speaking, I will bring that third, that's the one that doesn't perish in the conflagration of whatever calamity is about to come to Jerusalem. And this is Zechariah 13, who knows when that is. But anyway, I will bring the third part into the fire and purify it as one purifies silver, and I will refine it as one refines gold. It, that's the third part, a third of the people who endure, who survive, it will call out in my name, and I will answer it. Which name? Oh, he's got many names. Some old Joe Schmo. It doesn't matter what you call him. Pick any one of these names you want. These are all his names. It will call out in my name, and I will answer it. I have said, this is my people, and it will say, Yahweh is my Elohim. Now, if you look at that actually in Hebrew, it says, Yod He Vav He. Now, some people maybe don't like saying his name. We've discussed this before. And if you render it as the word Hawaii spelled backwards, Hawaii, Iyawa, Iyawa, which happens to also look like I-E-O-U-A, which is the 5 vowels in English. Is that a coincidence? You know, it's shuffled around a little bit, but essentially, if somebody says, hey, you're not supposed to speak that name, it's like, hey, I'm just saying Hawaii backwards, and I happen to think maybe it sounds like that, but because nobody knows how to really pronounce his name, can you get in trouble for saying Hawaii backwards? There are some people who say that there's a curse, a death sentence on anybody who dares mention his name. If you go to the land of Israel and mention his name, it's like you never hear anybody saying it. They'll say Hashem, they'll say Adonai, but they won't say Yahweh or Yahuwah. But you could say, well, I don't even know the name. How can I get in trouble for saying the name? I'm just saying Hawaii backwards. I'm just saying the 5 English vowels. It just happens to sound just like it, like the word Iowa, I-O-W-A, the state in the middle of the heartland of America. Iowa, Yahweh. Is that his name? Sure looks like it. The point is to say Yahweh, Aleph, Lamed, Hey, Yod. Hey, Yod. It says right here, the last verse of Zechariah 13. And it will say, who's it? My people, the third who get saved and spared from the conflagration, as Yahweh has refined them as gold and silver. Yahweh El-Hi. So, this is my thinking when I read this verse. It says right here, Yahweh says, I'm going to say proudly, like a grandparent with their baby grandchild, this is my people. While the people are saying these 2 words. So if you're going to learn any Hebrew, I would suggest you practice saying these 2 words. Yahweh El-Hi! Or if you want to add some English to it, Yahweh is my Elohim! It doesn't say the words, I believe in Jesus. It says, Yahweh will spare the third of the city who says these words, Yahweh El-Hi. Now, if you want to see prophecy being fulfilled, learn these words, and when the time comes, say those words. It's a literal contract. I've tried to talk about this previously when I was saying, if somebody says, right here there's this invisible door, and there's a treasure trove inside, all you have to do is stand here and say abracadabra, and it'll open up. And you can stand there all day long saying it, and it doesn't open up. And somebody else comes up and says, hey man, you got the wrong magic word. It's supposed to be open sesame. And you go, oh, I was saying the wrong word. Open sesame, the thing opens up and you got the treasure, right? It's a stupid little story, but what I'm saying is, if he says, thou shalt call his name Yeshua, for Yah, he, the great he, Yah, will shua his people, Ami, my people, Amo, his people, from their, and the word sin is errors, from their waywardness, from their turning astray. He will save, redeem, deliver, help. He will turn them back and help them and give them back the kingdom. So therefore call his name Yahshua, because what this boy will be about his life is Yahshua. And then so we change his name and say, oh, that's the name by which all men are saved. No, it's not. That's a mythical fiction. We're talking about truth. We're not trying to argue why our doctrines are sacred when they're doctrines invented by theologians over the past couple thousand years. We're looking at the words of Yahweh being true and prophetic. So we just at the break, someone said, oh, in the book of Revelation, it says the testimony of Yeshua is the spirit of prophecy. Well, there's a particular denomination that says, oh, that's us. We got the one who has the spirit of prophecy. There's a guy on TV these days who says, oh, this is the prophet. But you never hear him talking about Torah. So you might say, what's the real spirit of prophecy? Well, I'd be willing to say, if it says right here, Yahweh says, something's going to happen, 2/3 of Jerusalem is going to get wiped out, I will bring 1/3 into the fire and through the fire, because the word means into as well as through. So if Yahweh is going to say, tell you what, it looks pretty scary, but I'm going to bring you into the fire. But I'm bringing you into the fire. You're in my hand, and I'm going to bring you into the fire to purify you and bring you out, and you're mine. That's where we want to be. We want to be through his fire. And if he says there's one, call them special words, there's one thing that these people are going to be saying. One thing these people are going to be saying. These people are going to be saying, Yahweh El-Hi, Yahweh El-Hi. I want to memorize these words. They're very easy. Let's all say it together. Yahweh El-Hi, Yahweh El-Hi, Yahweh El-Hi. See, you know it. You now can qualify, say those words anytime, and it's yours. Because it's the spirit of prophecy. He prophesied it. We're counting on it. That's the ruach of speaking his words of truth. So with that same concept in mind, the purpose of writing this up is so that we can contemplate his Shem, his name, and claim every bit of it. And if somebody says, oh, he's just some old Joe Schmo. Well, if you know what Joe Schmo means, it means he will do his name. It means his Shemo, which is yoked to his word, which is supreme. It means he will do every single aspect of what every one of these words mean, because his name is based on it. It's his reputation. It is his essence and substance. This is El Shaddai. Every one of these words comes out of the scripture. So, on this other page here, each one of these is what each one of these words mean. And so what I try to do, just as a concept, is, and there's nothing safer about this, I just try to take the concepts, to take the concepts of the different letters, the concept of aleph. I am, I will be that which I will claim to be, or I will present myself to be. That's the aleph concept. So the word Eya Asher Eya is in the aleph position. Bet, that's to incorporate into physical matter, into a reference of position, of placement. El Most High. Well, that's the highest of what? Highest was reference to other stuff. Betness is the stuff. So that's in the bet position. Gimel. Dalet. I try to go through that. I can explain it if you're interested, or you can ponder it and think of a better way if you want, but I just tried to appropriate all these different words of his name according to alphabetic pattern of the significant meanings of the words. So anyway, you get to the very bottom here, and it says El. Well, the name of the airline of Israel is El. Does anybody know what El means? No, El doesn't mean Yahweh. Does anybody else have an idea what El means? Huh? Sorry, I can't hear. No, I'm just trying to see. See, this is the point. That's why I make this. Because I thought it would make an interesting t-shirt that Lee's going to help us make up here. On the front, it simply says, El. What part don't we understand? It's like, we don't understand any of it. But here's what it says. aleph-lamed is the word which means God, power, strength. It's the short form of Elohim. Ayin-lamed is translated as the height. So you could say this is the highest God, El. Or you could call it the Most High, though El Elyon is actually the way to say Most High. But the word Ayin-lamed is a yoke. And if aleph-lamed is powerful, great, then if you look at the last page here, down at the bottom, LL, the ultimate great yoke connecting. What's he connecting? The whole study of this class is everything that we do comes back on us. If Israel keeps the covenant, it gets blessed. If Israel betrays the covenant, it gets cursed. The connecting yoke. The vav is shaped like a yoke. The ayin is this scales, a yoke. Everything about the covenant is the yoke. And Yahweh is the guy who sees to it that everything's connected, including his name. He has yoked his word with his name. If you understand his name, you know his word, because his word is all about his name. And if you know his name, you know about his word, because his word is all about his name. It works both ways. His word is about his name is about his word. He's the guy who lives up to his name. And so 80 times in the book of Ezekiel, he says, such and such is going to happen. Then they will know that I am Yahweh. Why? Because when it happens, they will reference back, oh, this is exactly what he said. And you'll remember, oh, well, that's Yahweh. Yahweh is the guy who does what he said. He is the great yoke connecting all things together. And so that when you look at the aleph-bet and you say aleph is the plan and tav is the accomplishment of the plan, the bet through Shin is this straight line of connection connecting the aleph to the tav. And so right here at the top it says Eya Asher Eya, and there's a straight line with 2 bullet points at both ends. I've tried to use that symbol elsewhere, like on the chart of the meanings of the name, of the words in their natural sequence. And what that's saying is, Asher literally means who, that, which, but it's also a straight line. It's similar to the word Yashar, Yod, Shin, Resh, compared to Asher, which is Aleph, Shin, Resh. And if you notice, Yod, Shin, Resh, Yashar, El, Aleph, is the word Israel. Yashar means the straight path. El is power. So Israel means the straight path of power and strength. But Yod is also a prefix that can mean he will. Shin Resh, as we discussed last week, means Sar or prince. And Aleph Lamed is El or power. So it's the he will as a prince or a singular, as a poet, power and strength. Or remember, Shin Resh is also like a bracelet chain, or somebody who, like an artist who takes things and takes difficult matters and put them together into little links like a beautiful bracelet so that we can appreciate them. Who is Israel? Israel is supposed to be the people who are the prince of El along the straight path, who will take the difficult matters of the revelation of the kingdom of heaven to the face of the earth, to the peoples of the earth, and make them beautiful, poetic, melodic, like a bracelet chain of an ornamentation of beauty. Israel's job is to present the kingdom to the world just like that. The same way that Yeshua epitomized that job by presenting the kingdom of heaven to the people of Israel as a thing of beauty, as something that was apprehensible, containable, usable. It wasn't foreign. It shouldn't have been foreign. It wasn't too difficult. It wasn't too far away. Oh, it's right here. What Yeshua did is what Israel should do, and it's incorporated into the name of Israel. So the word Asher is this straight line. And so when you have a bullet point, it's a singular dot of saying it's very simple. This is what it is. When he says I am, Eya, or I will be, boom, it's like a bullet point. Straight line, another bullet point. That one looks like that one. When he says Asher, Eya, Asher, Eya, it's like this picture of the 2 bullet points with a straight line in between, which is just like a picture of the Aleph, Bet through Shin, Tav. And so to get back onto the concept of the spirit of prophecy, the spirit is the word ruach, which means to like It's not just the word spirit. It means to open the doors and let the wind blow through, to expand, to spread out, to give air, to ventilate. And if you go from here to there, that's the path. The prescribed path from Aleph to Tav is the derek. The word derek is the path, or the sojourner, or the wayfarer. The one who goes from here to there is a derek on the derek. And so you could say, but the path that Aleph takes to get to Tav is like the blowing of the wind, the breath of Yahweh, the hay going from here, whoosh, from Aleph to Tav. And because it's the prescribed path of Yahweh out of his own mouth, that makes it Kadosh, Kuf Dalet Shin. So the Ruach, the path, the breath, his breath of going from his utterance from his mouth, from Aleph to Tav, is the Ruach HaKadesh. I'm saying in Hebrew that it's the Holy Spirit. It's the prescribed path, the sacred process. The spirit of prophecy is that the Ruach is going to go from Aleph and take it to Tav. You could look at the alphabet, the aleph-bet in Hebrew, and say, that's the spirit of prophecy. That's the Ruach of the prophesying that the Aleph that he intended will become the Tav manifest, just like he said. Though, as the song, the aleph-bet song, it's the one word that's never translated as the word Aleph-Tav. It's a grammatical thing that points to, just like the process pointing to Aleph becoming Tav, you're pointing to that. That's the Ruach HaKodesh. It points to, it's like quotation marks. This is what's, you don't translate quotation marks. The word Aleph Tav in Hebrew is almost like quotation marks. It references something, but it's never translated. And it's a word we all reject. How have we rejected it? Because Yeshua himself said in the book of Revelation, I am the Aleph Tav. And he's the one we all reject. We either, in the first century, rejected him saying, he ain't the one, Kim be the one, let's kill him. And ever since, we say, the real Yeshua is not the guy that changed everything, distorted everything, nailed it to the cross and did away with it. He's the guy that told us to do it. Well, he can't be the one, we don't want to do it. Again, we've rejected him. The purpose of this class, the purpose of learning Hebrew, the purpose of engaging in these things these days, is so when we say Yahweh El-He, what we're saying is, we're keeping the commandments of the covenant. We're keeping the testimony that Yeshua had, the testimony of Yeshua, as our own testimony. So we're keeping the testimony of Yeshua as the testimony of Yeshua by keeping the commandments. Because the letter Vav and being a yoke doesn't necessarily mean this thing and also this other thing. It might mean the combination of two things together. When you nail two pieces of wood together, they become one piece of wood, especially if you glue them. Well, the glue is a Vav, so is the nail. So when you have the pillar of fire, pillar of smoke, was it two different things or was it one thing with two aspects? When Abraham was put into a slumber, a sleep, and two things passed through the middle of the split animals. It said like a smoking furnace and like a blazing torch. Two things, both a blazing torch and also a billowing furnace? Or was it one thing that had two attributes? A billowing furnace and a blazing torch. It's the picture of the pillar of fire, pillar of smoke. It's the imagery. Two with two images of one thing that pass through, because the word Yahweh being Echad means one or unified. It's a collective. We could go on with some of these ideas, but where's my notebook? I was gonna see where to put it. There it is. If I would encourage you to look at all the different words starting with Shin. Even the word Satan, Shin Tet Nun. Shin Tet means to deviate or apostate or turn aside. In Daniel chapter 12, it says, many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase. The word for running to and fro is spelled Yod, Shin, Tet, Tet, Vav. I apologize, you can't see that, and if I rub this, the whole thing's going to fall over. Yod, Shin, Tet, Tet, Vav. It doesn't say run to and fro, but the word Shin, Tet has to do with turning aside and apostasy. It also has to do with like it being in a canoe and paddling with oars. If you picture a big galley ship with hundreds of oars slapping the surface of the water as these men are rowing, it's the imagery of these oars slapping the surface to turn the ship around and flurrying about. That's Shin tet tet. So you could say the prophecy in Daniel that many shall Yod Shin Tet Tet Vav, many shall run to and fro is the way it's translated, and knowledge will increase. Another way to say that is that many shall run to and fro trying to find better knowledge. But they're turning to apostasy. They're turning to frantic flailing at anything else other than what they've already been given, because what they've been given hasn't worked. And so you could say, what's going on these days? You know, the New Age religions, turning back to various other witchcrafts, turning to all kinds of religion. From what I understand, there's people are leaving the Christian church in droves. Why? Didn't they find what they're looking for? But there's another way to read this word if you simply look at the meanings of the letters. Though it actually means, in definition, deviate and apostasy, you could say, well, Yod is a hand, Shin is a fire. So Yod Shin is a hand of fire, or a hand holding fire. Picture a hand holding a torch. Two tets. Well, a tet is kind of like a seal. It's like the big stone that rolled in front of the tomb. It's kind of like the concept of the authorized signatory. Those are tet concepts, like the branding iron that says, okay, the cattle come in and you get branded, okay, this one's mine. Circumcision is like a sign, a tet, a branding, okay, this one's mine. The Shabbat is a branding, okay, this one's mine. Vav is a man. So if you were illiterate and you were just looking at this word, you could see the man who stands behind the two tets, the two seals, two shields, is, you might say, the picture is that the man is safe from the hand of fire. But it's not just fire, it's also the teeth. So then you read the story of the book of Revelation, and you read the story here in Zechariah, and Yahweh says, the one who keeps the testimony of Yeshua and the commandments of the covenant will be safe from the coming conflagration, the coming Shin. So does that mean running to and fro looking for help? Or does it mean the man who understands the book of Revelation, who understands the Torah, who understands who Yeshua really was, doesn't have to be afraid because he's safe? And the word, interestingly enough, Yod Shin, remember the Yod can be the letter I. It's also pronounced as a Y or a J, remember, but it's kind of like I, and the Shin as an S. Of course, that's backwards, right? It's the word is. And literally, if you look up in the dictionary, the word Yod Shin means reality, existence, possession, property, what you really have. So you look at this and you say, the man who is behind the double seal, and going back to those three different places in the book of Revelation, we were just talking earlier, Revelation 12, Revelation 14, and I think, chapter 17 or something? 19? Anyway, we can talk about that later, but the point is, to go on with it, the man who really understands that really is in existence. He's not going to get burned up. He doesn't have to be afraid of the teeth. Yahweh's going to pull him right through the fire. In fact, Yahweh's going to put him into the fire. He doesn't have to say, oh, don't throw me in there. It doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. He can't be hurt. So if you look at Daniel 12:4, and it says, hide the words and seal the book until the time of the end, that's the next word. But you read it, for many shall run to and fro, looking for what the guy who's behind the two tets has already found. He's keeping the commandments of the covenant and the testimony of Yeshua. And so this whole thing goes together as a puzzle. But what I'm trying to show you is that this puzzle all fits. It doesn't deny the Torah, it doesn't deny Yeshua, and it explains the words of prophecy that were given that other people have guessed at and come up with all kinds of bizarre things which haven't been able to play out yet. If you look in Exodus 6:3, I'm going to show you another little interesting thing about El Shaddai, the Shin. The word of, talk about, I have this all written down in these Hebrew letters. I'm sorry, I can't read it so fast in English. But it says, he says, he presented himself, the word Elohim unto Moshe, and he said to him, I am Yahweh, Ani Yahweh, Aleph, Nun, Yod, Yahweh, that means I am Yahweh. And revealed unto Abraham, unto Isaac, and unto Jacob, Bet, Aleph, Lamed, Shaddai. That means, Bet means as, but the letter Bet as a prefix means on, with, at, through, by. So see, here the thing is, you have different translations. So on the chart I have a few things for the letter Bet, and if you look in the dictionary you'll see a few things, but you see what the translators have done. They'll say, it doesn't make any sense. So this time we'll say that the letter Bet means by. By El Shaddai, then it says Vav, Shin, Mem, Yod. Well, if Shin, Mem, Vav, Shmo, means his name, Shin, Mem, Yod means my name. Because see, the Yod is at the end. So what I'm trying to show you is that part of doing this translation work is that as you're reading in Hebrew, you notice tendencies of how the words are structured. You don't have to remember everything I'm saying, or you don't have to take a class on the internet necessarily, but you start looking and say, what's the difference between Shmo and Shemi? When Yahweh's talking, and you can see the translation where he says, my name. I did not present my name to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as Yod-He, Vav-He. That's what it says. But I presented it as El Shaddai. But here's another interesting thing. It says, lo, and then here's a certain word. I'm not sure if we talked about this word once before, but it's, gosh. He says, lo. Nun, Vav, Dalet, Ayin, Vav, Yod, Lahem. As in verse. So he says, as El Shaddai did I reveal myself. Thank you. As El Shaddai did I reveal myself to Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, and my name Yahweh, lo. Does anybody know how to pronounce this? Nun, Vav, Dalet, Ayin, Tav, Yod. Anybody want to take a guess? You have to be louder. Just give me. Huh? Well, this Vav would be pronounced as either an O or a U or a V or a W, right? That's a Vav. This is the N shape, N sound. Da'at. And at the end, E. Nudati. Nudity. That's, I couldn't hear you say it. He says, my name, Yahweh, no nudity to them. What does that mean, no nudity? Oh, it sounds like English. The word nudati, da'at, means to know. There is a place, so he's saying, there's another place that I have made myself known to Abraham. The word is nudity. See that the da'at would be past tense, myself, Yod. Da'at is to know, and then to noon is to engage the action like a lightning bolt, which is to say, I'm going to do this. I'm allowing myself to be made known. Nudity. Like I said, the word Yahweh, the word Zakar, has the same imagery. That's a whole other story, but my point is, why would, I'm trying to show you a problem with the translations. In Exodus 6:3, he says, by my name Yahweh, I didn't reveal myself to them. But another translation has it as a question that says, did I not reveal myself to him? It's like, well, wait a minute. He says, I revealed myself as El Shaddai. Did I not reveal myself to him as Yahweh? And another translation says, I did not reveal myself to him as Yahweh. Which is it? Two opposite meanings. One says he did, the other one says he didn't. That's the problem. Then you go to Genesis 12:8, and it says that he called on the name Yahweh. You go to Genesis 14:22, and it says his hand with the El Yahweh, El Elyon, Kana Shemayim Va'aretz. This is Abraham telling the king of Sodom. He says, I regard the strengthening of my hand by Yahweh, El Elyon, the Most High, Kana, maker of Shemayim Va'aretz, maker of heaven and earth. So here, Abraham is equating Yahweh, El Shaddai, El Elyon, and the maker of heaven and earth as the same God. However, it says here, I didn't reveal myself as Yahweh, but only as El Shaddai. But here, Abraham is quoted as saying that it's Yahweh. What I'm saying is that you look at the translation, it's hard to figure out what's going on. And when you make a statement like, okay, my translation says that Abraham did not know Yahweh as Yahweh. He only knew him as El Shaddai. Somebody can whip out these other verses. Then you go to Genesis 17:1, and it says, Yahweh saying, on thee, El Shaddai. Yahweh's claiming to be El Shaddai. So who's who? Okay, now then you go to, here's another interesting thing. Go to Genesis 18:19, and it says, Yahweh speaking of Abraham, and he says, because I have loved him, therefore, and then he says what he's going to do to bless him. But the word I have loved him is Yod, Dalet, Ayin, Tav, Yod, Vav. Yod, Dalet, Ayin, Tav, Yod, Vav. Vav at the end meaning him. This is what I have done. But that's not the word love. Love is ahava. And mercy and compassion is racham. But that's the word da'at. But it's translated, I have loved him. What does it mean? What's that?
Wow.
I know him.
Yeah.
But see, this is the Hebrew Tanakh. Don't these guys know their language better than King James, maybe? My point is, I keep trying to show you that the reason for this class is because he didn't say that he loved him or that he knew him. What he said is, Dalet Ayin Tav. I will do that, or I did do that with him. Dalet Ayin Tav. Look up Dalet Ayin. It means knowledge, understanding. Yod Dalet Ayin is where you get the word yada. You hear people say yada, 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 yada. Yeah, no, whatever. It's not whatever. It's exactly the opposite of whatever. It's a really big deal. It's the experience of familiar knowing. Adam knew his wife Eve, and she begat. That's yada. And so see what we've done in our language is we flipped it out to be absolutely the careless antithesis. But Yahweh says the greatest love that he had with Abraham was yada, nudity. And again, you can say, oh, I only hear English. I'm trying to show you that a lot of English words are Hebrew. You probably know a lot more Hebrew than you know. And if you start looking through the dictionary and try to sound out words, for example, there's this other one, that he came from Ur of the Chaldees. Abraham did. And I was looking at that, and all of a sudden I came across this, I don't see where I wrote it. I think it was spelled aleph-vav, yeah, here. Mem, aleph-vav, resh, from Ur. So here you have the mem, aleph-vav, resh. Well, I recognize the word or, that's light. And mem means like this birthing, or this womb, or this chaos, right? And it can mean the place of, or it can mean the place you're from. And it can mean away from. So either can it mean the place where you're at, or it might mean the place where you came from and then you're not there anymore. So again, like I say, in Hebrew, you can see these words translated as meaning one thing or its very opposite. And how do you know which it is? But you look at that, and I thought, I read this word, mem, aleph, vav, resh, but I don't see, it says from light, or the place of light, or away from light. I don't see the word in the English translation. And I flip through and mean, that's In English, it's simply spelled you are. You know, Abraham came from down in Iraq, and it's spelled aleph, vav, resh. That's the word light. Again, we put in this phonetics and say, well, they don't mean anything. But if he was hanging out in of the Chaldees, the word Chaldean is kaf, shin, dalet, yod. That's Shaddai. And then ending with the letter mem for plural, so it's kashadim, like shadim. Well, Shaddai means, remember, to devastate, to like a cannon up on a hill that just wipes out everybody in the field. So the Assyrians were like conquering warriors. Shadim. Kashdim, like warriors, they became known as the Chaldeans. That's not even the same phonetic. But you see, they were these heroic, fierce conquerors. But while David was king, the Assyrians were held in the bondage. They couldn't rise to their power until David was gone. And it was after Solomon that Assyria finally jumped up and smacked down Israel and invaded the northern country. And 150 years later, it was a renegade Assyrian general who was ruling Babylon that took over and kind of conquered his captains, you might say, and it became known as Babylon. But that only happened because Solomon went punk, went Phoenician, went nuts, blew off the covenant, because he disregarded Yahweh's instructions. And the only reason the Assyrians and the Babylonians arose to power was because Israel went stupid. And so the whole thing about this is the way to get back is to come back to regarding the words of the covenant. It's the reciprocation. If you go to Revelation chapter 1, we're getting right near the end here. Who is this one that John saw in the book of Revelation? So I wrote down a list of the character attributes of who John saw. Now we have to look at the book of Revelation and say this. Either John didn't see it, or else somebody manufactured the book and it's not true, or it is true. John did see it, and what we have in English, which came out of Greek, is the best rendering we have, though it's not in Hebrew. But we have to either trust it or not trust it. My rendering of the New Testament is to say anything I see in the New Testament, which looks just like the Old Testament, I can trust it. If it looks like something's changed, it's now skeptical. So, if the Old Testament that says Yahweh will save his people, that's Yahshua. And then if all of a sudden the Savior's named Jesus, wait a minute, something doesn't fit. But if the Savior's named Yahshua, just like Simcha Perlmutter said, hey, that fits exactly. What does Revelation chapter 1 say about this one in the vision of John? It calls him Mashiach. It calls him the Word of Elohim, which has got to be the aleph tav and the aleph-bet. It calls him the one who was, who is, and is coming. He's called the trustworthy witness. He's called the firstborn from the dead. He's called the ruler of sovereigns of the Eretz. That's the ruler of the kings of the earth. It says he's the one who loved us. He washed us from sins in his own blood. He made us sovereigns and priests to his Elohim and Father. He's coming in the clouds. He was pierced by them, those that he was in confederation with on an earlier occasion. He's called, in verse 8 of Revelation 1, the Aleph and the Tav, the Rashon Achron, the first and the last. The one who is, who was, and who is to come. He is called El Shaddai, and he has a voice like a trumpet. In verse 18, I am the first and the last, the living one. Chapter 2, verse 8, I became dead, and see, I am living forever and ever. I possess the keys of the grave and death. Chapter 3, verse 8, you have guarded my word and not denied my name. Chapter 3, verse 10, because you have guarded my word of, or with, is that the letter bet? Endurance, I shall also guard you. It's a qualification. If then, because you have endured and guarded my word, the yoke is, I shall guard you from the hour of trial which shall come upon all the world. That's these big teeth. The hour that's coming at the end to all the world, which is these big scary teeth, to try those who dwell on the earth. Well, the word try is nun somic. The symbol of the class, remember, the orange banner with the nun somic, it not only means life support system, but it also means to test, to experiment, to refine, and smelter. It's what Yahweh is going to do to his people. He's going to nun somic his people who are trusting in the nun somic, so that if the word nissi for my banner, his banner over us is in love. See, everything fits together. But he's going to come to nun somic the earth, and the people that are already on board with the nun somic, the living one lifted up, who like the two letters with all the letters of the alphabet around it, like the picture of the Ahasuerus, which is the name of Esther's king, remember? It's like the center hub and all the spokes around it, and all the letters of the alphabet point to it. The word nun somic literally means a miracle, a sign, a signal, an ensign, and it's the exact same word as aleph-vav-tav, the exact same meaning, which is oath, which is also a letter of the aleph-bet. So in each letter of the aleph-bet that he inflates, Yahweh Elohim zavot, the word zavot, zadi, bet means to inflate and fill up, aleph-vav-tav. His armies are like these letters of the alphabet. Zev also has to do with sprouting a wing, so it's like Bet Aleph means to arrive, so it's like the arrival of winged warriors. Zavot. And if we say, Yeshua is our shepherd of life, Chayil Yeshua, we are his army, we're anticipating that he's going to inflate every bit of his oath, because in our lives we are filling up his word. If his word says, rest on the Shabbat, you betcha. Okay, we're resting on the Shabbat. If his word says to go to Jerusalem for the festivals, okay, we'll do everything we can to go to Jerusalem for the festivals. If his word says regard the festivals, okay, we're going to regard the festivals. And even if we're on the wrong track, and even if we're not got quite the right calendar and we're on the wrong day, the heart to regard his words is different than the heart that says, Joe Schmo, whatever. His name just, whatever. He is passionate about his name. Fanatical, zealous, jealous is the word elkona. It's on the list. The four faces, Revelation 4, verse 8. These are the four faces on the hilt of the sword. The four faces, the ox, the man, the lion, the eagle. He chose, remember, he's the creator of heaven and earth. He created some beings, some cherubim, with these four faces. Ezekiel talks about it, and the book of Revelation talks about it. Those four faces are his design, Yahweh's artwork. There's a message in them. What do they represent? Servant, priest, king, judge. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the four Gospels, the dispositions of what those things mean, that's another rendering. The four faces around the throne saying, Yahweh, Kadosh, 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 Yahweh, El Shaddai, who was, who is, and who is who coming. You see, in the book of Revelations, it's equating Yahweh with El Shaddai, with the one who was and is, who is coming, the eternal one, the Kadosh one, and it's lining them all up with who this image of the one coming back, the Resh, our Shin, Kuf, after this. So what I'm saying is that these letters, Kuf, Resh, Shin, Tav, is the picture of the revelation of the face, the apprehensible part of our mighty one, our Elohim. But remember, the word face is Pei, Nun, Yod. Pei is a mouth. Nun is the living thing which emerged from And Yod, it means my, but it also means causes something to happen. What is it that's yours, that's in your mouth, that jumps out of your mouth and causes something to happen? Words. So if Yeshua is the Word of Elohim, he's also the face of Elohim, but we only saw his human camouflage, his masquerade while he was here, and we're not supposed to worship the camouflage, the masquerade, the mask of dust. But who he is, that's a different matter. And who he is, according to John and according to Abraham, is El Shaddai, Yahweh Elohim Sevaot, Konah, the maker of Hashemayim ve'ha'aretz. And you can go through the rest of this list. And if we said, that's El, the one who is connected in the highest regard, his name to his word, and the word Joshmo means he will do everything his name is about. Because that's him. That's who he is. He's the guy that does everything his name is all about. Then all of a sudden, Yoshmo becomes an incredible testimony and witness, ayin dalet. The way to measure who he is he's the guy who said he'll do what he'll do. And he can do anything. Because Ein Sof, without limit. Ein Sof, Somic Pei, Sof, or Zomic Vav Pei, like the word Joseph. Yod Vav, Somic Pei, means one who will accumulate and gather. Yom Suf, the sea of reeds. Reed is that which sucks up water. So Ein Sof literally means without the ability to suck up and dry it out. There's no threshold. Without threshold, that means if you have a room full of stuff and you start clearing it out and sucking it up, you'll never find the back door. Because he's the guy who has so much stuff you can't exhaust what he's got. You can't exhaust the depth, the complexity of who he is. This one who we are regarding his very words is so incredible, so huge, so vast unto eternal countless numbers of dimensions. There's no absorbing it, sucking it up. There's no getting to you'll never get to the back door. Because the word suf is also threshold. You'll never find the threshold, the limit. These words are great. We can count on every single one of these words. Anyway, we're pretty much at the end here. Revelation 5, verse 7. The Lamb came and took the scroll out of the hands of him who sits on the throne. And then Revelation 5:9 and a few verses following. Does anybody have it? I don't have my New Testament up here with me. Does anybody else want to read what's right after 5:9? And we probably should end with that. Does anybody have it that wants to?
Revelation
5, verse 9 and following.
And they sang a new song, saying, Thou art worthy to take the scroll and to open its seals. For thou wast slain and hast redeemed us to Elohim by the blood out of every kindred and tongue and people and nation. And hast made us unto our Elohim a kingdom of priests, and we shall reign on the earth.
We shall reign on the earth. Not necessarily going to heaven. There's some speculation about where we go, but he has redeemed us back to Elohim. That's who this one is. Then the question is, well, what about the Lamb? Is he the same guy or not? What I'm saying is that even these words have left it a mystery. But if we simply leave it as saying we're supposed to worship Elohim, chapter 22, verse 1 talks about the throne of Elohim and the Lamb. Verse 3, his servants shall serve him. Revelation 22, verse 4, and they shall see his face, and his name shall be on their foreheads. Blessed are, verse 14, blessed are those doing his commands, those guarding the words of this book, and who worship Elohim, so that the authority will be theirs under the tree of life, and to enter through the gates into the city. Verse 16, I am the root and offspring of David, the bright and morning star. 22 verse 13 is like 3 aleph taves, if you want to look at that. Revelation 19:1, hallelujah, deliverance, that's shua, and esteem, that would be kavod, respect and power to Eloheinu, that's our Elohim Yahweh. Verse 6, the people will be saying, Yahweh El Shaddai reigns. My point is, if there's any question about this class, about what do we think of Jesus and what do we think of Yeshua and who is Yahweh and who is El Shaddai, the best I can tell is that they are indistinguishable because they're essentially the same. The same words. Yeshua said, don't say, show us the Father. If you see me, you see the Father. Why? Because I say everything he said, and I only do what I see him doing. But anybody that comes along saying the Torah was nailed to the cross and is no longer pertinent, we have a new people, a new covenant, a new relationship. We don't keep the Sabbath day. We don't keep the festivals. We follow the customs of the sun god worshippers. That's not Yeshua. That's not who the book of Revelation was talking about. Any Christian out there that wants to be part of this number that the book of Revelation is talking about, I suggest you read the Torah. And any Jewish person out there that wants to regard Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh and El Shaddai, I suggest you read the book of Revelation and regard what the Almighty showed to Yochanan and come to terms with it, because your teachers aren't telling you the truth either. We need to take the initiative for ourselves to proclaim his word and to proclaim Yahweh El-He.